These reports should be submitted to the President and the National Assembly within 1 month of the reference period. Consequence management provision. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the current act under Section 8, 5B stipulates that the governor should from time to time make a formal report and presentation on the activities of the bank and the performance of the economy to the relevant committees of the National Assembly. But, however, there are no provisions for sanctions when this does not take place. So the bill, therefore, proposes that where the governor fails to make a report to the President and the National Assembly as required by law, it should be served with a warning letter by the National Assembly. And if the failure persists by recommendation from the National Assembly for the governor's suspension from office by the President. Ratification of the bank's budget in line with the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. The bill also gives practical effect to the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 by providing that the budget approved by the board of the CBN can only be implemented upon the consideration and ratification by the National Assembly. In conclusion, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the bill, if passed into law, will further strengthen the bank to carry out its principal objectives in line with Section 2 of the Act, which is to ensure monetary and price stability, issue legal tender currency in Nigeria, maintain external reserves, and also to safeguard the international value of our legal tender and promote a sound financial system in Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill has no financial implication and no compendium is attached as required by Order 76, subsection 3 of the Senate Standing Orders, 2022 as amended. I thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleague for your attention. And I pray that this bill is supported. Thank you, Mr. President.
Commented on this, but I have 2 or 3 issues. The first issue was first mentioned by the Deputy Minority Leader on the tenure. I will stand for 5 years tenure, single tenure. Even the president is a 4-year tenure, president. So if you propose 6 years tenure, I think it's a single tenure, 5 years. I'll propose that when we're finalizing the bill. And when it comes to the issue of monetary policy, monetary and fiscal policy, because of what we had during the screening of the central bank governor and the deputy governors, I would want the 4 deputy governors or 5 deputy governors to be part of the monetary policy, because some of the issues the governor may not want to disclose when they are discussing some important issues. I want every deputy governor who are part of the governorship of the CBN, Governors Council, to be part of that. And then when it comes to the issue of phasing out the old currency, I think all over the world, there is no tenure for phasing out old currency. 2 years is too small. Some people will lose their money when it comes to a tenure. All over the world, they allow it to run naturally, to phase out, if there's enough new currency printed by the central bank. And I want to plead, or I want the promoter of the DC to check and see if we can even extend, not 2 years. Either we leave it open or we extend it to 5 years. 5 years period to phase out the old currency. That's my submission. I'm happy, and I support this bill when it comes. And I say kudos to the mover of this.
Thank you, thank you. Now, please, we reduce to...
Very distinguished colleague, Adeola Solomon Olamilekon, representing Lagos West Senatorial District. Ogun West Senatorial District in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, that's a slip of tongue. Please bear with me. I'm Ogun West. Mr. President, let me say that before now, when such an amendment is being proposed, you will only see this kind of amendment emanating from central bank themselves. In time past, this is the first time that somebody who is an experienced banker chairing the Senate Committee on Banking and proposing these amendments to the Central Bank Act and all provisions that he has made proposal to are very fundamental and very vital for the continuous existence of the Central Bank of Nigeria as we currently have. Mr. President, for instance, each time we were engaging the Minister of Finance or Budget, we said there should be coordination and cooperation between the fiscal and the monetary policy. We only say it, but really it's not there. But with this proposed amendment, what we have tried to do is to institutionalize that coordination we've been asking for. So there is no game saying. There would mandatory need for both ministers to sit down and speak about both the fiscal and the monetary policy. And that is the right step in the right direction. Secondly, the budget of Central Bank of Nigeria over the years, from time to time, it's always been attended to under the table, in secrecy. A budget of minimum of about 2.53 trillion naira to be treated under the table. With these proposed amendments, they have no choice than to lay their budget before the National Assembly. The only area of interest to me again is the area of the appointment of the compliance officer. The bank already have a compliance office. This is one area that the mover of this amendment must look into. Because already the bank have what we call the audit committee that can play this role effectively. But if we now appoint a compliance officer that reports directly to the board without speaking to the CBN governors and the management team, it gives some concern. And how does he intend to function without collaborating and working with the management itself? So this is one area I want us to look into. Mr. President, in rounding up on the proposed amendment, the temporary advances which the bank regularly gives to the federal government, the existing act says 5%, but this bill is proposing 10%. This is another area I want the mover of this amendment to look into. When we say ways and means is something that is in the front burner that is distorting the current economic situation as we currently have. And this existing bill that we have is saying 5% of the total previous year's revenue of the federal government should be advanced to the federal government. And the new bill is saying 10. Reason why it's saying 10, we would like to know so that we can be well guided. Because by the time we apply 5% and 10%, they are not the same. Further clarification in this regard. But Mr. President, aside those two, all other provisions as contained in this document, I'm in total support of it. And I'm in total support of the amendment as so proposed by the Chairman Senate Committee on Banking. I so submit, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I represent Imo West. Mr. President, this amendment of the CBN Act couldn't have come at a better time than this. This is the time that the whole country is worried about the economic fortunes of our land. So I must commend the sponsor and indeed the sponsors of this amendment for timely intervention at this particular point in time. Mr. President, there are so many aspects of this bill that are worthy to be commended. Let me start with the issue of a single tenure for the CBN governor. I think a single tenure of 5 years for the governor, 6 years for the governor of Central Bank and his deputies is commendable. Because oftentimes you will discover that when some of these governors are reappointed for a second term, that is when we actually run into a problem with most of their decisions. You will recall that some of the CBN governors that have succeeded, like Professor Soludo, he didn't do a second term, he did a single term. So I am supporting the tenure of CBN governors to be a single term for 6 years and the deputies. Mr. President, one of the main issues we have in the current CBN Act is the harmonization of the tenure of CBN deputy governors. You will discover that right now in CBN, all the deputy governors were screened the same day, appointed the same day, and they have the same tenure. But that is not what the Act says. But this amendment is seeking to harmonize that so that we don't have such problems again. So I support this amendment in that regard. But let me talk about the Chief Compliance Officer. The problem with the CBN is about governance and compliance. So I don't want to agree with Senator Yayi when he was talking about looking at the compliance officer a second time. That position of a compliance officer, being a deputy governor, is indeed what we need at this point in time. And such a position must come from within the central bank. You don't have to take an outsider to make him a chief compliance officer. It has to be somebody who has worked in the central bank and has become a director in the central bank that you can make a compliance officer. And there is no conflict from this bill, from the powers of the CBN governor.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Mr. President, let me round up. So I believe that if you have this compliance officer who is a deputy governor, so there's no conflict between the compliance officer and the CBN governor, because the compliance officer is indeed a deputy governor. Mr. President, in rounding up, let me say that it is important that we also look at the issue of a coordinating committee, because this bill has proposed that this coordinating committee will be handled by the Minister of Finance. And I agree with him totally, because right now the Minister of Finance is the coordinating minister of the economy. So the Minister of Finance should head the coordinating committee of both monetary and fiscal policy. But by the time we go for public hearing, I'm also proposing that NMPC should be represented in this committee, because it's a high...
Thank you. Senator Abdul Ningi, you have the floor.
My name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Marte Monguno Nganze Federal Constituency of Borno State. Well, this bill is apt and germane against the backdrop of the fact that laws are supposed to be subjective and therefore change with the changing nature of society. And then my observation one is with regard to the parliamentary supremacy on all organs of government. As it is couched now on the proposal, the CBN will only appear before the committee of the National Assembly for the purpose of their monetary policies and what have you. As it is couched now, it is subjective. There is need for us to have a very clear and unambiguous language in the bill that states the budget of the CBN is subject to approval of the National Assembly. Because as it is now, it is couched in subjective terms. We want a clear and unambiguous terms that it should be subject to approval of National Assembly. Then with regard to issuance of legal tender, I'm happy that it is now not going to be on the whims and caprices of the CBN governor. There are conditions precedent that this bill proposes before issuance of legal tender, that there should be enough currency of the proposed new tender, at least 70% in the possession of the CBN, and then the coexistence of the new and the old currency together before the eventual coming into being of the new tender. So this proposal is very, very important in view of our ugly experience in the immediate past of having change of legal tender. Then with regard to the issue of temporary advances, I wholly concur with the proposal made by the committee to the effect that 10% of the 3 previous years is 10% of the 3 previous years that is going to be given as advances. And it should be paid within 3 months. It should be repaid within 3 months. So it is completely opposite, diametrically opposed to what was in the law before, of having an advances of 5% of the previous 1 year revenue. So it's not the same. In view of these submissions that I made, I support the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your eloquent contribution.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to contribute, but you are shifting the goalposts now. 2 minutes, you said before. It got to me, you said...
You are a former chairman of a national party. You are used to speaking in public. I know you can compress all your ideas into one sentence even.
Thank you. I will be very brief. Mr. President, let me start with the issue of these debates. One way of helping us, my name is Senator Victor Ume. I represent Anambra Central. One way of saving time during debates will be when these things are considered by our various committees and brought to the Senate. Members of those committees should give others the chance to contribute because they've debated these things in their committee before making this recommendation. That's why we are losing time. In this bill, the committee said the bill is co-sponsored by all the 32 members of the Senate Committee on Banking. If you had taken cognizance of that, we would have saved time in the debate. Let me go straight to the recommendations made by the committee. I'm coming now. You people gave us this to...
Mr. Chair, you have the floor. Don't worry. You are protected.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me also commend the committee for a great work done. You know, you did wonderfully well and captured most of our concerns in these proposed amendments. I'll go to the tenure of the CBN governor. My view is that this idea of trying to make one single term for governors and executive officers in Nigeria, we should be able to retain one term of 5 years for governors of central bank. Let it do 5 years and go. Fresh hand will come. If you look at what we were caught up with in the last one that has just left, because he stayed for too long and he now left, we are now crying over a lot of mismanaged policies. 5 years will be sufficient for somebody to try his bit and leave for others to take over. That's my contribution on tenure.
Thank you. You have 1 second remaining.
There are so many things here, please. The temporary advances to the federal government, I'm happy with what they have done by now saying that these temporary loans, these are temporary loans. They're not supposed to last for too long. They're bridging funds given to the federal government. So I wholeheartedly support that the money should be repaid in full within 3 months instead of 1 year. It's a well thought out.
Thank you. Time is off. Thank you. Senator Tokunbo, then Senator Sadiq, then Senator Tahir.
A yeoman's job by the committee. My comment areas are just 2 or 3, if time permits. The area of ways and means that the bill is suggesting 10% up from the previous 5. We've seen the chaos we've entered into in the last few years because of this ways and means. I don't know the wisdom of the committee to increase it rather than reduce it. If this is what we are in trouble today in the financial system distortion, so I think it should be pegged at that 5 or even less rather than increasing it, if that's the problem we are facing. Then number 2, I wanted to see in this bill the control elements of the functions of the CBN as to what we've seen in the last 5 years, 4 years. We see a CBN that is an importer of rice. We see that in a CBN that is growing rice here and there. That this control element, this bill should target those areas. Very, very specific and in detail. That's my own take here.
Thank you very much, Senator Yaro Anthony.
District. I believe that Mr. President will give me the privilege as chairman of finance to make comments for 2 minutes instead of 1 minute.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. My comment is on the Coordinating Committee for Monetary and Fiscal Policy. I think this is the best that CBN will have if this come to be an act. Because what is happening at the moment, there is no coordination at all. There is only, just as my distinguished colleague said, Senator Adiola, there is only that resemblance of coordination. But there is no coordination between the managers of our fiscal and monetary policies. And that is why we have been having a lot of policy somersaults. When you're talking about fiscal and your monetary policies, policies that you will do for a period and you maintain it. And you're doing it for a reason that within so period, what you intend to achieve, you'll be able to actualize it. But before then, you will see that there are changes. So with this coordinating committee, I think it will frame it better. And then the tenure. I do not see anything wrong in a 5-year single tenure. All we need to do is to expunge that renewal. 5-year is enough, because the consequences of it is that the executive president is only going to be there for 4 years. And the moment, if there's any eventual change, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, if they don't go together, there will be an issue. So I think the 5-year period is germane. And then the chief compliance officer, from within the system, from CBN, not passing below the rank of a director, who has had experiences to be a deputy governor, to be elevated to a deputy governor. Somebody who has been in the area of compliance within the CBN, who has been gone through all the rudiments of that compliance department. I think it will be a very good thing for the CBN. And lastly, the issue of recapitalization. It is very important that our CBN recapitalize. But I will also want to add that what we have not seen in this amendment is the issue of our foreign reserves. We should not be tying our foreign reserve to only one currency. We should diverse it. There should be diversification in our reserve, and we should encourage to also keep our reserves locally. And lastly, the issue of 10%. I think 10% is on the high side. Ways and means giving 10%. And in a country where it has been abused from 2015 till 2023, it is not good for this country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Senator Isajim Ochocho, then Senator Umi.
Umar, and I represent the good and decent people of Kwara North. Mr. President, the beauty of this bill is what I want to bring forward so that we don't lose it completely, because nationally, every sector of our national life, the major challenges we have that we've always failed has been addressed by this bill. And it interests us, Mr. President, that we should look at every other bill that has to do with every sector that is important to this country to go this way. How do I mean? Our major problem, be it in security, economy, education, health, everything comes from lack of coordination, lack of compliance, and lack of consequences for not complying or doing the wrong thing. And this bill, I'm happy to see that this has been addressed in coordination. I'm particularly happy that trade and investment, agriculture, and the private sector is part of that coordination, because that is how we are going to really loop up our national economic issues. Compliance, I'm happy.
You have 1 second remaining.
I'm very happy that we have somebody who understands why he has to insist that there has to be compliance. He's not there as witch hunting or whatever, but he's part of the government there. He's a deputy governor, he's a career person, and he understands that this is going to be about institutional survival and institutional performance. Mr. President, my last argument, we have to keep a single tenure. 5 years or 6 years, let the CBN governor knows that he's not appointed as a politician who will be manipulating and be playing politics to be able to win a second term. Let him know he's here to do a job and get out and allow other people to come and continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Distinguished colleagues, my name is Garaba Musa Maidoki, representing the good people of Kebbi South Senatorial District. I wish to thank the movers of this motion profoundly for a job well done. My only contribution, sir, before we go to the bill, is how does it affect a common man? And I think this law should look at the various charges the commercial banks are imposing. It's on. It's on. I think this law should also include the various charges the commercial banks are imposing to their customers, different charges that are unwarranted for the money a customer put in the bank and the bank used to trade with that money. And then you are having various charges that even if you don't touch your money at a certain time, the value of your money will fall down. Secondly, Mr. President, about this coordinating committee, I support it 100%, but we need to put it legally, what is their task and target and what the law expect them to do. So whatever target they set is legally binding to the bank and can be changed from time to time. Another point is the chief compliance officer. As the Senate chairman for the compliance, I wholly support this action. But we must understand what is best practice. Best practice in every good company is the chief compliance officer is reporting to the chief executive, which is the governor in this case. Because in any case, the governor is the chief compliance officer of the bank. So we must not take away that role. We should have a compliance officer that report directly to the governor. So lastly, Mr. President, about the currency. The old currency.
You have 1 second.
The old currency of, if you have a dollar, no matter how old it is, if you go to the bank, they will exchange it to you. I don't want to see limit. You cannot trade with the money. You cannot go to the public and use the old currency. But anytime you have an old currency, you should go to the central bank or the commercial bank and exchange.
Thank you. Senator Yaro Anthony, you have the floor, 1 minute.
I have read the write-up on the lead debate, and I'm a bit confused about this. Because the write-up itself says it is to debate the general principles, and then goes on to list out what it says to be amendments. But when we actually look at the paper we have, there are no amendments here. There are reasons for the amendments and what the amendment is trying to address. But the amendments themselves are not listed. And why this is important is because of the importance of this bill. It is important that we see the details of the proposed amendments to be able to properly debate them. What we have this afternoon are the reasons for making the amendments and what it is trying to cure. But the amendments themselves are not here. Because if you are talking of a bill, the bill must be specific as to the details so that we can see what the resultant effect would be when it is then passed. I think that it's therefore important that we step this back a bit and let us look at what the proposed amendments will look like when the bill is debated at the public hearing. Because after this second hearing, it goes to the committee and there's a public hearing. But actually, we have not seen what is to be presented to the public. That's my contribution, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished Adeni.
It's critical. Ratification of the bank's budget. The committee has recommended that the budget approved by the Board of Governors of the Central Bank can only be implemented upon the consideration and approval by the relevant committees of the National Assembly. Further, Mr. President, our procedure here is that the budgets are approved by the National Assembly for all agencies of government. And if we take this proposal that the Committee on Banking, Finance, Insurance, and other financial institutions will approve the budget of the central bank, it will be inconsistent with what we do here. So
thank you. Wonderful observation. Very good observation. Thank you. Senator Tokunbo, you have 1 minute. Then Senator Sadiq.
Caution to say that we should not make a law because maybe of the over exuberance, maybe of somebody that is in office or somebody that has occupied that office before. And I want to make this comment in the coordinating office. Currently on the board of CBN, the Minister of Finance is being represented by the Accountant General and the Permanent Secretary Ministry of Finance. Their responsibility is to represent the minister in coordinating the various policies between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance. If we want to create another coordinating committee that is going to be under the Minister of Finance, in this case, maybe a good economist, a banker, and all these ones, but in not all cases, because at one time we had a Minister of Finance that did not have even finance background. So we can do it in the budget law, in the appropriation law itself. We don't need to amend the CBN Act to bring the Minister of Finance, because subsequently there will be a conflict of role in the Banking Act as to who is going to be in charge of the BOFIA. Two, in respect of the Ways and Means, too, the Ways and Means is given a year because of the nature at which we receive our revenues. Revenues are earned 1 month in advance. And Ways and Means is an overdraft to the government, which is the true responsibility of the central bank, banker to the government. If there will be any need for the government to overdraw its account, and you say they should pay within 3 months, that will be too short. And that may likely also going to be extended to the commercial people, So I still feel it is better for the Ways and Means to stay and be extended and be cleared up to the end of the year. By then, all the revenues for the current year would have been realized. And like it's also suggested, if they are not realized, they can be deducted from the subsequent allocation in the Federation Account Allocation Committee. I support very strongly one single tenure for the CBN governor, and that tenure for 5 years. 5 years is enough. We don't need 6 years, and the other one can be, we can delete from there.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Distinguished Senator Tokunbo. Your time is off. I'll give you one more second.
On issuance of currency, I support that the currency, the notes be allowed to circulate and without any limit. And from time to time, as that power is given to the bank to determine when to issue new currency, not to do what we did before. To one day just wake up and say, pack everything and go, and we are bringing new kind. No, issuance of currency is the dirty ones, the torn ones, all the damaged ones, because money itself is a security item.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Senator Sadiq Umar.
I want to say, first of all, appreciating the committee and especially the chairman of the committee for they did a very wholesome job, and they went deep to bring up some rudiments that we are now debating on. In my own view, I believe in continuity. In continuity, whereas we are no longer bringing it in second term, I am supporting duly one term of 6 years. And I want to say, if we are taking one term of 6 years, we should give the board authority to recommend to the National Assembly, to the Senate, that we can remove whether the governor or the deputy governor when they are found wanting based on the report of the compliance officer. That one is important. And that is why the compliance officer must be a person of integrity who must have risen to the, to the rank of director before being appointed.
You have 1 second remaining.
And however, I want to come that let me itemize it. I don't agree with lifting of this capitalization to 1 trillion from 100 billion. Rather, I support that we should take it to 500 billion. Everything we do in the financial industry reflects on our economy. Let us recognize the inflation we are having now. So I'm supporting 500 billion, not 1 trillion. It's too much.
Thank you, Senator Deputy. Okay, you have 1 second. 1 second.
We can see, we can recognize the rascality we had in the last 2 years. And that is why I'm recommending that the compliance officer should be able to, while giving report to the board, let the Senate have the report so that any person who is becoming so rascal with our economy can be removed.
Thank you very much. Senator Adeni, SAN, you have the floor. You round up. You are the last to contribute on this. Thank you. The last to speak on.
Congratulate all of us who are members of that committee. This bill is actually meant to address the major shortcomings in CBN. Shortcomings that have mitigated, that have worked against the effective functioning of CBN. And I want to believe that if the major issues, amendments suggested here are affected, CBN will be able to operate optimally. First, I want to start with the issue of the compliance officer. Mr. President, the compliance officer we are talking about here doesn't necessarily have to have accounting background. We are talking of somebody who has adequate knowledge of the workings of the various departments of CBN. And it is completely distinct from what Senator Olamilekan did mention. It is not an accounting function, so it is not the job of what do you call it, internal audit. Internal audit is a completely different department. But we are talking of somebody who has requisite knowledge, who has worked sufficiently long enough in various departments of CBN, and who will now assume the position of deputy governor, as the 5th deputy governor of the CBN. Now, the issue of federal character is very important. North Central has been grossly shortchanged. And I want to appeal, okay, to my distinguished colleagues and the Senate President that that position should be reserved for North Central. And
thank you very much. You made your point. You have made your point. Okay, 1 second.
The recapitalization of CBN. I do not want to support the idea that the recapitalization should come from capitalization of revenue reserve. Let there be a fresh equity injection. Okay, because revenue reserve has all along been available for CBN to use. So let them bring in, let fresh fund come in to CBN instead of capitalizing the revenue reserve. Then finally, the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee. I'm happy that the current composition of the MPC, is comprised of tested professionals. We expect a much more vibrant MPC because all the policy measures revolve around the MPC. So we want a situation where MPC will come up, tinker with some of the variables depending on what is happening in the economy.
Thank you. Senator Ume.
By extension, congratulate the leadership of the 10th Senate for putting the square peg in the square hole. when you are doing the right thing, this is the kind of the product that you expect. It's very rich and very, very tantalizing. I want to talk on two aspects of the bill. One is the appointment of a minimum of 1 career staff of the bank in the Committee of Governors. You know, most of the previous governors of central bank are from commercial banks. I know the main target of commercial bank are quite different from that of the central bank. Commercial bank are there to make profit, and central bank is to monitor the economic policy. So having an insider in that board is going to be very useful for the smooth running of that place. So it's very, very apt. The second one has been touched by Senator Ningibe. I want to emphasize on it. That is the issuance of new legal tender to replace the existing ones. Experience has shown that whenever we want to change our currency, it's always done in a hurry and put the customers in jeopardy. And a lot of them run helter-skelter, and they lost a lot of money in the process. So all the recommendations are very apt, and we put the customers in very good mood. Sufficient time given, and then legally, the two should be allowed to run for a year before the extent of the former one. Lastly is the tenure of the governor of the central bank. I don't know why the mover is suggesting 6 years. I'm even thinking that 5 years is enough. 5 years is even enough, one term, no extension. When you stay in one office too long, it becomes uninteresting. But since I suggested 6 years, one term, I'm equally in support of that. Put whatever you want to do for the country within that 6 years, and there's no extension, so that whatever you want to do in 6 years, it is enough to put your best and give room for another person. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President.
Senator Abbas, then after you.
That the last time the Parliament had any idea about the Central Bank Act was in 2007. And I'm perusing through the proposed amendment. One is really delighted about taking the CBN back to its normal course, its constitutional course, and then its course in the CBN Act, being the banker's banker. And therefore, you are giving the CBN its rightful mandate to be able to do what it needs to do. Otherwise, in the last few years, you have seen how CBN is so bastardized that it becomes anything but the banker's banker. Looking at the tenure of CBN governor, I am sure a bill at the second reading is supposed to look at the principle behind the bill. I think this matter, I do not have a particular opinion about it. I am sure the general public will also do the needful. But propoundly, one of the revolutionary proposals was, of course, an appointment of a career staff of the bank in the Committee of Governors. Mr. President, look at what happened in the last 2 decades. Whenever a CBN governor is appointed, as soon as he takes over, every director of the existing CBN then becomes something that is not attached. Unless you have an attachment with the incoming CBN governor, then there's every possibility that as a director, you may leave that place. Therefore, by doing that, you are erasing institutional memory. Today, the current CBN governor appointed, has made a question mark on all the directors of the CBN because it has been a tradition that he inherited, but it's not in the act. But this particular provision will make it mandatory for any CBN governor to take along and retain the institutional memory of that institution. Thirdly, at least one female among the external directors. I think it's a good provision for the female folk. I think it is something that is global. Every time you come up with ideas, you must be able to integrate the female folk who are actually in the majority. And then the compliance officer, like other speakers have said, this is really apt. This is very, very important. The second is the limit, the temporary limit of advances to the federal government. And I'm sure we need more data. We need more evidences why it should left 5% to 10%. given the economic position of the country, what are the advantages advanced as to the, from taking it from 5 to 10? I think we need more information. I will get it during the public hearing. Thirdly, issuance of...
Leader, you have 1 second remaining.
Powers of the National Assembly taking 89, 88, and then 134, 132 of the Constitution as to the supremacy of the National Assembly over whatever happens in Nigeria. I think for a very long time, we have not seen the CBN bringing their budget. We do not understand it, we have not seen it, and nobody seems to provide any information year in, year out. It begins to tell Nigerians that the CBN is bigger than the government, that the CBN is bigger than the National Assembly. And I'm sure this provision is apt, is making sure that CBN are responsible and accountable to everything they do for and on behalf of the citizens of this country. Lastly, sir, the bill also try to improve the monetary policy and the interim financial reports, which has also been missing. Over the years, sir, everything is now being domiciled in CBN. There are no good area, no questions raised, no answers provided. The CBN is seen as if it is a hole in themselves. And therefore, this is a bill that, as senators...
Thank you, Leader. Thank you very much. Of the bill that has been debated, you don't go into the nitty-gritty, you don't go into the details. So when we move further, because there will be room for public hearing and so on and so forth, by the time you go to the next stage, then the entire thing will now be open to you. In fact, the bill should also be made available to you. I think it has been gazetted and made available. When you look at that, you see the details to that. I'm sure the chairman, you should be able to avail you with the entire bill. Well, thank you very much. I decided to allow for many people to make contributions because it's an important bill, a bill that has to do with amending the laws establishing CBN. It's not something you just talk about it to 1 or 2 people and then you push it over. Particularly looking at the various areas that are affected. I don't want to go into the details, the tenure of CBN governor, appointment of minimum of 1 career staff of the bank, and so many areas that are really, really important. So that's why I decided, look, allow people to ventilate their views. Let us say their views about this proposed amendment. There are very, very cogent issues included in this bill. And let me commend everyone here. You gave a good account of yourselves. We have bankers. In fact, the sponsor of the bill is, a former MD of a bank. That's why probably you have it, structured in this manner, very, very rich, well, put together. I commend him for putting the industry that brought about the entire bill to be as rich as it is. And also the contributions that were made to Minister Ochocho, a banker himself, the Chairman Committee on Appropriation, Finance Committee, Sadiq Kumar, Chairman of another important committee that is related to our economy. So a lot of contributions were made, which really show how important this bill is. So I thank you very much for making your robust contributions, ventilate your views in the best manner possible. For this reason, let me now put the question. Those in favor that the bill be read the second time, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.